Welcome back to America Decides. This was waited for a while, so when it arrived today, it was kind of newsworthy. Republican Governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, tapped Florida Attorney General Ashley Moody to replace Marco Rubio in the Senate once Rubio resigns after he gets confirmed, as he inevitably will, as the next Secretary of State. Moody will become just the second woman to serve Florida in the Senate. Those who are trying to remember, Paula Hawkins was the first, elected in 1980. She's a longtime Trump ally and was one of several states' attorneys general who signed on to a lawsuit that would have helped, though it didn't succeed, Trump overturn the 2020 election. I want to bring in our reporter panel, Sabrina Rodriguez and Juliegrace Brufke. Sabrina is national politics reporter for The Washington Post. Juliegrace, senior political correspondent for The Daily Beast. One other thing to note about this decision. So Ashley Moody did something that we often overlook or say doesn't really matter, but in this case, I think did. She was the only member of the Florida hierarchy of Republicans to endorse DeSantis run for president. Those things get remembered, and they can come back around. Sabrina?
Absolutely. I mean, she is in a very unique position. I think this was DeSantis's way of sort of having it both ways, where he got to pick, make a pick of someone who is his ally as well as Donald Trump's. I think it was very key from the second that Marco Rubio was tapped for this position that there was going to be very aggressive lobbying for who would be the senator. There was discussion about whether that could be Trump's daughter-in-law, Laura Trump. She ultimately, withdrew. There's this conversation about why that happened and whether it was partially that DeSantis was not going to make that call.
Reading the writing on the wall.
Recognizing that that wasn't going to happen. But this is sort of that happy medium for DeSantis where he gets to, be in good graces with Trump world, which is something he's been striving to do since the primary run, while also having someone that's in his corner going into the Senate.
Juliegrace, you had some really interesting reporting on Mike Turner. We talked to John Bolton about this. Like I said, he's not a household name in America, but he occupies a significant role in the House of Representatives, the chair, until very recently, of the Intelligence Committee. No longer the chair, ousted by the Speaker, which the Speaker is empowered to do, but your reporting tells us there's something deeper and not necessarily darker, but just structurally, politically relevant about it.
Absolutely. So I caught a lot of Intel members off guard and a lot of members of the Ohio delegation off guard who didn't really get a heads up on that. But there's definitely some moderate outrage over that. But Mike Turner kind of emerged from the room, talked to some Intel members and said that Mike Johnson cited Trump as part of his reason for removing him.
Even though everyone denies that.
So Johnson came out and denied that. But sources kind of in that orbit have suggested that that was a factor.
And what would have been the problem with Mike Turner continuing? Is he too independent, too Ukraine-oriented? What?
So he's a big proponent of Ukraine, and a lot of conservatives really took issue last February when he put out a statement calling for Biden to release some classified information on an issue that he called a national emergency, where after the briefing, members were saying that it wasn't urgent, which kind of caused an issue, not just even with some of his allies, which was kind of a problem. There were a lot of calls for him to step down, and a lot of the Freedom Caucus members kind of take issue with his stance on FISA. So there was kind of a push for Johnson to remove him before, but it definitely caught even some members of leadership off guard with that decision kind of sprung on them there.
And we got a new name today.
So Rick Crawford, he's the most
another non-household name, ladies and gentlemen.
So he's definitely more aligned with Trump. He voted against Ukraine funding, and a lot of so the members on the committee seem satisfied with that. But I've talked to some people that kind of worry that Mike Turner, it's with these small margins, it could kind of incentivize him to potentially leave Congress early. I haven't spoken to Mike Turner about that, but a lot of members have their eye on that, or potentially have less loyalty to Johnson on voting for the GOP agenda. So kind of how he navigates this after kind of getting slighted and having his gavel stripped there is going to be interesting to watch.
Sabrina, Juliegrace just mentioned the small margins. It is something we will always talk about in the House of Representatives, not because we're trying to be repetitive, but because it really matters. What gets done or doesn't get done will depend on how these small margins function as a team. This could create another upset, whether it ripples through a retirement earlier than expected or just makes moderates feel like they're not being heard.
Oh, no, there's no question that heading into Trump's inauguration, that is going to be the challenge. And of course, we're going to see plenty of threats launched on social media to make sure that everyone gets in line when Trump wants to see something get done. But when we're talking about margins this small, again, there's going to be a few people who are very powerful, either direction ideologically, that can really try and steer this and derail a lot of legislation. And of course, for the American public, there's already this perception that Congress doesn't get much done and a question around what is Washington getting done, it's going to be very difficult and a huge challenge for Trump and incumbent on him to try and find a way to push things through quickly because he promised to make swift change.
Sabrina Rodriguez, Juliegrace Brufke, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.